And another player, of course, is Cassius mailula, who has just been signed, of course, by Toronto FC. Um, I think we are all excited to see what this boy is going to do over there. Has obviously ended off his season with 15 goals in 31 games for Sundowns. And he's also moving over at the right age, at the age of 22. I would say his team, Toronto, is struggling a little bit. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of The Corner Flag, and I'm your host Deshane, and today's episode is an interesting one because we will be looking at the stars that we will be looking out for from South Africa, of course, who will be playing their trade abroad. And of course, as you can see, we are again at Islo Studios, so they're the ones who will be shooting today's show. So if you are into media, you're doing podcasting, you do music, instrumentals, whatever it is that you need, of course, you can holler at them and they'll definitely fix you up quite nicely. And on to today's show, I'm really excited about this one because we are going to be looking at the stars, of course, right? So we do have a big contingent of players that do play overseas. Some are younger. So maybe in another episode we will do another episode that we'll be looking at the younger stars to look at for the future. But for today's episode, we will be looking at the players who are first team players primarily and our starters primarily also. So yeah, we'll be looking into those. And before we go too far off the borders, we will be looking at players who are playing abroad indeed, but are still on the continent. And headlining this one, of course, is the Lion of Judah himself, Percy Tau, of course, and he plays for Al Ahly. Had a stellar season last season where he helped his team to the Egyptian Cup, the Premiership, as well as the CAF Championship as well. So a really, really important player for them, a really important player for the Bafana lineup as well. Has been playing stellar football, but there are rumors that he might be going back overseas. So it's a really interesting development on that side. We will see what happens there. And another one who is playing, of course, with him in Egypt is Fakhri Lakay, who plays for FC Pyramids, of course. Also had a really, really good season where he scored about 10 goals. So it's really interesting to see if he gets on the radar of Hugo Bruce before the AFCON qualifiers and the AFCON Championship that will be happening in Ivory Coast later this year. And another one, of course, is Judith Mosiamedi. And this one is interesting because he was a free agent, of course, after leaving Marumo Gallants, and he is going to go ahead and play for a newly promoted team out in Tunisia. I believe it is pronounced as, I might even butcher this one, guys, so I'm really sorry, but it's called El Gawafel Sportivo de Gafsha out in Tunisia. So it's really good to see that our South African players are getting recognition up in North Africa, where, of course, historically, I would say that the football has been stronger, but I think it's thanks to teams like Mamelodi Sundowns, Pirates, SuperSport, Marumo Gallants, who played recently, of course, and all of these other teams that are taking these African Continental Championships seriously. And of course, they're making a good account of themselves and playing really, really well. And I think that's why now we're starting to see a trend of South African players who are playing in these places. North Africa in particular. And another one, of course, who played for Mamelodi Sundowns, of course, is Hashim Domingo, who is going to go ahead and play for Raha Club Athletic. And he was a stellar player for Sundowns as well, and he's now going to play for these Moroccan Giants. So it's a really, really good thing. I think it's great to see some of our players going to these teams, of course, and these places, and not only playing subpar, but or playing as like French players, but they're starters, and they're really doing really, really well, adding a little bit of South African flavor, of course, to these places. And we're going to go off to Asia now, and in Asia we do have Lars Veldfake. He is the former Bafana striker. Maybe some of you people might remember him. He is that big birdie guy. Has really been banging goals for fun out in Korea for Suwon FC. I don't think he really got enough of an opportunity I believe him and another striker that we're going to be mentioning in this list, of course, which is Dinondlo, but we'll get to him later on. He's one of those that I believe is a really good player, but never really got the opportunity to show us what he really has, especially on the Bafana front. And he scores goals, a big number 9, didn't really have a player of that profile. In the past, as South African players, we don't really have big players like that, especially if we're looking at our upfront players. So he's having a stellar season and assisting and scoring for fun, of course, out in Korea. And we are going to be going over to the MLS, and the MLS has become fertile ground for South African players recently. A lot of attention has come to it, of course, with Messi moving over to Inter Miami, and he's been doing a great deal of damage to his opposition out there, and he's actually elevated the level of the players that he plays around him also, and he has Sergio Busquets also with him. Jordi Alba is also rumored to have been going over there. Robert Taylor is one person who's been a beneficiary of Messi playing in the team, as well as Martinez. So Inter Miami, they were struggling prior to Messi's arrival, but now they're playing really well, and with all the eyes now on the MLS, I think it's great that our South African players are there as well, and maybe they can get opportunities to move over overseas. And one person who does fit this category, of course, is Hlongwane, who has scored at the time of this recording around 7 goals and has equaled Messi's tally in the North American Leagues Cup. So it has been really interesting to see, because this is the competition that, of course, has the MLS teams as well as the Mexican teams, and I guess the Canadian teams that play in the MLS pitted against each other, and maybe even teams that maybe regularly wouldn't play against each other in the CONCACAF competition. But it's been really good to see what Hlongwane has been doing over there. Has been scoring for fun also. I think at the time of this recording is on about 15 goals and 3 assists. Has scored 7 goals in the Leagues Cup, as I said. Out against Toluca, he scored 1 goal. He did actually score another, but he was ruled offside, of course, so that didn't count. But prior to that, he scored a brace in 3 matches consecutively. Right, so he is really showing what he's got over there. He's developing really nicely. The composure's there. I think when he left, back when he was at Marispec, he only averaged about like 3 goals a season or so. Right now he's up to 15, so it's really great to see the improvement that he has gained over there in the MLS. So it's great to see. And I think this comes at a great time, of course, when AFCON is coming. So it's really good for Hugo Bruce and the African contingent, or the South African contingent at that. And another player who has moved over to the MLS, and also we've seen a lot of growth in his play, of course, is in Blom out at St. Louis City. Also coached by Bradley Carnell, of course, who is an ex-Bafana man also. So it's really good to see how good we're doing over there in the MLS. Blom also has come out of his shell, plays as a traditional number 6, pressing along in those boxes and getting those key interceptions and starting the play for his team. So it's great to see how well he will do, of course, because this is his first season. Hlongwane also, this is his second season in the MLS. Last season he also ended off the season on about 3 goals, but he had a really good work rate high work rate, of course, that Adrian Heath really loved about him. So even though he didn't really get too many goals last season, the fact that he worked so hard and was always there in defense and in attack, same as he's doing in this season, it's really good. But now he has the goal conversions to complement his game, so I think that's a really good thing. So Blom, we can see he's also growing in confidence, and it's great to I really wonder what kind of play he's going to turn into, because he expresses himself a little bit more, holds onto the ball, reads the play a bit more. Even with the high press that St. Louis employs, he makes tackles in key areas, which is high up the pitch, which really is good for transitions and starting off attacks. So it's really good to see Blom on that front. And another player, of course, is Cassius mailula, who has just been signed, of course, by Toronto FC. I think we are all excited to see what this boy is going to do over there. Has obviously ended off his season with 15 goals in 31 games for Sundowns, and he's also moving over at the right age, at the age of 22. And would say his team Toronto is struggling a little bit. So hopefully he will have a positive effect on his team as well, as far as scoring goals, finishes on both feet. It's been a while we're really excited basically to see what he will develop into in the MLS, of course. And another player who also is quite young, who moved over to the MLS, is ex-Stellenbosch defender Hlongwane Makhanya, who went over to Philadelphia Union. And it's great to see that a defender also has moved overseas, because we are grateful, and I'm glad that we are seeing a lot of our attackers moving overseas. It is solving the scoring problem that we've had historically as Bafana Bafana, but it's great to see that we do have some other players in other positions that are being spotted. So he is being taken at Philadelphia as part of the Under-22 initiative that a lot of these MLS teams are taking on. So it's great to see what he will do when he gets on that front as well. And another player, of course, in the MLS is Tsikin Sabeleng. Not too many people have spoken too much about him, but he's actually an MLS veteran. Has actually played longer in the MLS than all of these other players that I've actually mentioned previously, being Hlongwane, Blom, as well as Makhanya. And Cassius Mailula, of course, who hasn't really made his debut for Toronto yet. But yeah, Tsiki has played well. Recently played against Inter Miami in the League Cup, also against Messi and Busquets, and he played really, really well. So it's interesting to see if he will raise his hand and if he'll get a little bit, or if he'll get noticed, of course, by Hugo Bros, and maybe even give a little bit of competition in that midfield, of course. So I guess that rounds up our players in the Americas, of course, and we will be moving over to the next continent. And we do have quite a few players on this continent, of course, and that is being Europe. So in Europe, we do have quite a few players. Starting off our list, of course, is Mihlali Mayambela, who plays for Aris Limassol out in Cyprus. Has been in sterling form for his team also. They've been participating in the UEFA Conference group stages. Scored a scorcher. I think they played against a Polish team, I just forget the name, but scored a scorcher. Unfortunately, they lost in that game, but he has been scoring consistently for that team, and has actually gotten a contract extension recently due to his stellar performances. So it's great to see. If they do progress further, it would be great to see if they actually end up in the Champions League, and yeah, we'll have another player in the Champions League. That's always good. So the next player on the list, of course, is Gift Links, who plays for Aarhus GF out in Denmark, and he has been converted. He used to play as a winger, but now he's been utilized as a fullback out in his team. But it's great, shows great versatility from him to take on that role, and actually started performing very, very well. I think now he actually does provide himself as an option in that position for the Bafana setup as well, because you don't really have a lot of depth in that position. So he's really, really skillful, really, really fast as well, and his defensive game has improved due to the fact that he's been playing in this position for a while. I think that's all the better for us. And our next player, of course, we're going to be talking about is Darren Smith, who plays for Inter Turku out in Finland. And he's also been banging goals. I believe he scored about 15 or so goals last season also. Goes about his business quietly, hasn't really been noticed and been talked about in South African media and in South African outlets, but also a really, really good option in that attacking front. I think as far as if we're talking actual number 9s, we do have a few talking about Lyle Foster, Mothiba, and all of these other people, but I think he also does deserve an opportunity, and is only at the age of 25. So if he does get roped in, he might give us a different dynamic in that front as well. And our next player we will be talking about is Yangabaliso, who also plays for Oulu out in Finland. So another player who is making his mark out in Finland, also doing his business quite quietly out on the front, but also a really good player who's looking forward to a big season ahead of him. And the next player, of course, is Kata Homasheho, who also plays out in Finland, of course, for Finn Harps. Another good player, of course, also got transferred recently. I believe it will be his second season out in the team, and a really, really good player also. And we're really excited to see what type of player he will be developing into, and what kind of mark South African players actually as a whole will be leaving in that part of the world, because we don't really have too many. But those three definitely will be flying the flag high in that front. And our next player, of course, is Keenan Iyer, out for Sandefjord out in Norway. Another good player also, plays out on the wing. Has been a good player and a critical part of his team in the previous season. So hoping for a bigger season ahead, of course, in this coming season also. So our next player, of course, is Thabo Cele, who plays for Radom out in Poland. Is it Poland? I believe it is Poland. So Cele, he might not be there for too much longer. There have been rumors that he might be going to Kaizer Chiefs. But it's still a pending deal. Until he's been announced, we're not really going to speculate too much more on that. But I think he's one of those players who still has a future and definitely has a bit more to offer out in Europe. Chiefs is a great team, of course. Maybe it might be because he wants to start getting call-ups for Bafana Bafana. It might make him a little bit more visible if he plays at home. But he's also a really, really good player. Also played for the under-23s, had a really, really good tournament out in Tokyo the last time out when we played. So it's really a strange factor that he hasn't really been factored and integrated into the Bafana team since then. But he did play, of course, in the COSAFA. And he was one of the stand-up players in that competition as well. So maybe that might have been enough for him to get a call-up also. So hopefully, especially because he is a workhorse, he is an engine, goes box to box. So I think he provides a different type of profile midfielder that we have in that position, competing with the likes of Teboho Mokoena, your Luke Leroux, your Siphelele Sitholes as well. So it'll be interesting to see what type of season he has, of course. And our next player, of course, that we'll be talking about is Siyabonga Ngezana, who went out for Steaua Bucharesti after getting a deal from Kaizer Chiefs, of course. Has already made his debut, but he is in his first season, of course. I think Romania has had quite a few players who played there, your likes of Mima Thambu as well, who also played out in Romania, and he's also 25, so I think he also has a bit of time to develop out in Europe. And it's a big team in Romania also, so they do play in big competitions and big, they've been known to win the league of gold also. So yeah, it's a good move for the boy. As I said, defenders, it's not too many we don't get too many defenders who moved overseas. So along with Oluti Makanya, he's another defender that we exported in recent times. So that's always good. That's always good, of course. And the next player that we will be talking about, of course, is Liam Jordan, who plays for Roma Björkana out in Sweden. I hope I'm saying that right. If there are any Swedish people in the audience, maybe they might teach me how to say that a little bit better. But yeah, he's also had a stellar season out in Sweden. Has been a playmaker for them. Assisting with the goals as well as creating goals for other players as well. So a big season. Also another player that maybe even for Bafana Bafana could be an option, especially in that number 10 role indeed. And the next player, of course, is Tashreeq Matthews, who plays for Sirius out in Sweden as well. Has also been a stand-up player not only for his team but in the entire league as well. So he's one of those that I do believe also should have gotten at least a knock on the door for Bafana Bafana, just to give a little bit of depth in that role and competition also. Definitely will have to prove himself, especially against the likes of Hlongwane, who's having the form of his life right now out in the MLS and is probably knocking on a potential European move after the season. So only time will tell, of course, but hopefully we will see the best of him in the coming season. So we are talking about Tashreeq Matthews, of course, also. So I think he has also been rumored to have attracted interest from other teams out in Europe also. And hopefully if he moves to a bigger league, it will be great for his development as well. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was on the books of Borussia Dortmund at some point. And they moved over to Sweden. So it'd be great to see him move into a bigger league, of course, with tougher competition. Yeah, it will only be better for him, of course, if he moves into that type of environment. And the next player, of course, we're talking about is Luke Leroux, who also plays for Fabech out in Sweden, of course. Also a really big player for his team. Scored a really good goal for his team recently also, and also proving himself to be one of the better midfielders in the league, also in the Swedish league as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of season he has, especially with the type of season that he's had, where he's had the mantle of being the holding midfielder and linking up the play between, of course, the defenders as well as the strikers, and also chipping in as far as creating as well. And that, I think, concludes our players, of course, in Sweden. And we will be moving over to Turkey, of course, where we will be talking about Levu Piri, who is going to be playing for Rizespor in Turkey. This is following his loan move from Paris FC, where he was playing last season. He was an integral part of that team, but it seems like his move wasn't made permanent. But he will be a really good player for Rizespor in the Premiership. Of course, will be a big player for them, especially because he is a seasoned midfielder. Really knows how to hold that engine, hold the midfield together, an engine also in the defensive midfield position. Also one of the players that I personally feel didn't really get too much of an opportunity to showcase his ability out for Bafana Bafana. He did play here and there, but not really enough to justify the talent that he has, especially considering that he played for France for years prior to that. Captain Gangam as well during his time out of France as well, when he was playing in League One. So a really good player. So it will be interesting to see what kind of season he has out in Turkey. And he is joined, of course, by Dinon Glovu. I call him the mercenary, of course, because it seems that any team that's in need of a striker to give them at least 10 plus goals a season, Dinon Glovu is the guy to call, and always banging in them goals. So he will be going out to play for a team called Sakaryaspor out in Turkey as well. Really good player. He was a free agent, so it's great to see him also keeping his stock rising out in Europe. And well seasoned and well traveled player. I mean, played in China, where he scored for, I think it was probably 20. Okay, I could be speculating. I could be speculating, of course, but it was upwards of 15 goals for Zhejiang Greentown when he was playing out in China. Played for Karabakh as well back when he was when they were playing in the Champions League, of course. A really well traveled player, a really good striker as well. And that concludes our players out in Turkey, and we will be moving on to our next player, who is Liseri Alcet, who plays for Tudelano out in the Spanish second tier. So he will be hoping to help his team qualify for or qualify and go to the Premiership and play out for in La Liga, of course. So we will be wishing him the best of luck. A really big season ahead of the boy, and we will be watching. So hopefully he will get a lot of game time and get an opportunity to play in La Liga should everything go well for his team. And our next player, of course, that we will be looking for is Simon van Devenboeren, 21-year-old striker who plays for Vitesse out in the Netherlands. Last season he was on the brink of first team football, came on as a sub in most of the games, but it seems like he is integrated fully into the first team this season, and will be looking to score a lot of goals, especially in his maiden season with the first team, and also knocking to knock for So Simon van Devenboeren is also hoping to play for South Africa. He has made his intentions known. I feel like personally he should have played in the under 23 competition. I feel like he would have given us a little bit of a dynamic. Him alongside players like Cassius Mailula, as well as your Kex Chalke in there, who also played, of course. Your Radio Pani is in there also. Your Tapelo Maseko is also in there. So I think we do have quite a few players who are under the age of 23, who can build a really nice squad with, combining, of course, our overseas players with our local players, of course. So Simon van Devenboeren is looking for his maiden season playing with the first team, and we're rooting for him also, and hopefully he will be integrated into the South African setup pretty soon. And the next player, of course, that we will be talking about is Mothiba, who plays for Racing Strasbourg out in Ligue 1 in France. Last season was hampered by a knee injury, but came back in the latter part of the season and started scoring goals as well, but was a little bit frustrated with the game time he was getting, especially coming off the bench and being used mainly as an impact player. But in the preseason that we've had recently and what we've seen under Patrick Vieira, he has finding goals for fun, and he does seem to be a big player, for Vieira and what he seems to be wanting to do. And he's a big player, and he's in the plans, of course, which is what we want to see. He is a really, really good player. If you're talking on the Bafana front, he does provide another profile of number 9 that we don't really have. Big burly striker, classic number 9. If you had to profile him closer to what your Benzimas, your Lukaku's, and players of that likeness would offer. Doesn't really offer as much skill as far as South African players go, because South Africans, they're really nifty with their feet. But he's effective in how he plays his game and what he does. Whenever he's in and around the box, he knows where to be and always scores either with the head or with the foot. A really, really good coach as well. So I think he is a really, really good option, especially going into the AFCON competition that is coming up. So he does provide another alternative in that position. So it's a big season ahead for him as well. Hopefully it's an injury-free season, but I do anticipate a big season for him under Patrick Vieira later this year. And another player who is playing in Ligue 1, of course, and this is a sensitive topic for many of us, of course, and that is Ayanda Sishuba, who is playing for RC Lens and looks set up to be playing in the first team this year. Last season he was playing for the reserve team, but he was integrated here and there with the first team. But he did start his preseason out with RC Lens, the first team, and scored a brace and assisted in the previous game they played in the preseason as well. So he is eligible for Belgium. And Belgium has roped him into their youth structure. So hopefully Safa and the people in charge, please guys, they should really act on this boy. He's 18 years old. So if you're looking at the younger players that we have in good positions right now, he could form an integral part of that team as well. So yeah, and Ayanda Sishowa, hopefully, please guys, whoever's watching, whoever is in control and can do something about it, please get this boy on board. We really need this boy. And that concludes our players out in France, of course. And we will be looking at our players who are playing out in Portugal. And we're starting off with Pelo Sitole, otherwise known as Zaya Sitole, who plays for Tondela now, after moving, of course, from Belenenses, who unfortunately got relegated to the third tier of Portuguese football after their season last season. But yeah, thankfully, Pelo Sitole won't be following them down there after securing a move to Tondela, who do play in the Portuguese second division. But it is still a good division, and I think he is a really good player, of course. In profile similar to someone like Bongani Zungu, quite big, burly, tall as well. So he really knows how to control that midfield also. So it's really good to see him come back, especially from the injury that he had also, the foot injury. So it's good to see him playing, and he's really having we do anticipate a big season for him up ahead. And the next player, of course, he is going to be playing out in Portugal and also got promoted with his team. That is Nkanyiso Shinga, who is a fullback. Great to see a fullback who is South African playing out overseas, because you don't really have too many players playing in that position, especially in the higher leagues such as Portugal, of course, which is a great league. Also a big season ahead of him. So I think it will be great to see if Bafana will integrate him into the team. And yes, we've had Unyoko movies in that position, but I feel like Nkanyiso Shinga could give him competition, especially looking at his age. He's about 23 years old, plays for a club called Estrela de Amadora. So it will be great to see what he does in his maiden season in the Portuguese top flight. And our next player, of course, who will be playing in the Portuguese top flight. Of course, that is Gabomelo Kodisang, who had a stellar season for Moreirense last season, but bought permanently from Braga, which was a great decision by Moreirense. And why wouldn't they buy him, guys? He had a stellar season for them, ending off the season with 13 goals and I believe 7 assists, if I'm not mistaken. So really big season ahead for the boy as well, coming to play in the Portuguese top flight. And I do think he's one of those players who is destined for bigger things, especially if he proves his quality once again in the Portuguese top flight. So he's one that we will be looking for to provide some goals, and hopefully he will finally get selected for Bafana Bafana. Was on the brink last time out, but for whatever reason Hugo Bruce decided not to choose him. So hopefully this time around he will see the light and choose a boy. We'll give some great competition out in that winger position to battle it out with your likes of your Mishali Mayambelas, your Hlongwane, your Positaos out in that position as well. So quality player. So we're really looking forward to seeing what Gabomelo Kodisang has to offer. And our next player that we'll be talking about, of course, is Apelele Teto, who is signed recently to Livingston FC from TS Galaxy. It would have been in mid-season, but it does seem that there have been some issues with getting his work permit out to play in Scotland. So he might be loaned out, or they might come up with a different alternative. But he is another great player. At 19 years of age, I think it's great for his development to have moved to such a great league at such an early age. I mean, Premier League is right next door, of course, and the Scottish League is really good. Has some really great teams out there, such as the Rangers, the Celtics as well. So some really good progress on that front. And we're really proud of you, boy, and hopefully you will make us proud over there raising the flag. And another player, of course, who is playing out in Scotland, of course, is Corin Daba, who got loaned out to a team called Kilmarnock. I hope I'm saying that right, but they are playing very well. Defender also. As I said, we don't have too many defenders. It might be a repetitive line that I've been saying in this video, but we don't have too many defenders playing out overseas. So it's great to see our boy out in the Scottish Premiership doing his thing. And hopefully also at the age of 23, one of the bright prospects who will develop, and hopefully one will also raise his hand for Bafana Bafana, because you do need some players in that position. Of course, yes, we've seen your Sianda Kulus in there and what have you, but I think it's really important that we start implementing some younger players into that position also, especially if they're playing at the level that they're playing at. I think it's great for their development. So Corin Daba, big season ahead, and we're looking forward to what he has to offer. And our next player, of course, is Keegan Jacobs, who plays for Arbroath out in Scotland as well. A veteran in the Scottish League also, and has by all accounts made a good account of himself out on that league. So it's great to see what he'll have to offer, especially with the age that he has and the experience that he has out in that league. And I think that wraps up our players out in Scotland, and we will be moving over to England, of course, and headlining our players over in England, of course, is Lyle Foster, who is looking to debut in his season in the English Premiership. So he will be playing against all of our biggest and favorite teams, of course, and his team Burnley will open the league, of course, against Manchester City. It has also been reported that Wout Weghorst has been loaned out to a team in Germany. So in that number 9 position so far, I believe they do have Lyle Foster as well as Jay Rodriguez, who are your natural number 9s in that position. Also with the departure of I forget his name. And this is such a guy. I mean, his name is just here. Ashley Barnes. There we go. So with the departure of the veteran Ashley Barnes, we are going to see Lyle Foster hopefully having a big part to play in the Burnley team this year. And they do have quite a few great players in the Burnley team. Your Manuel Benzes are in there. Your Manuel Amdunis are in there, who also got bought. Your Zaruris are in there. It's got Twines, so your Nathan Tellers, Abufemi's, who also came in around the same time as Lyle Foster, out from Queen's Park Rangers. So Burnley also gearing up for a big season ahead in the team, in the season upcoming, being coached of course by Vincent Kompany, the Manchester City legend. So it's great to see what Lyle and the Burnley contingent has to offer out in England. And our next player, who is of course also playing out in England, is Ethan Chislett, another player in that number 10 attacking midfielder position. So Ethan Chislett, also another player who should be incorporated into Bafana Bafana. Also got recently bought by Port Vale out in League One, and scored, I believe, a brace in the Carabao Cup against Fleetwood. So a really quality player, also knows how to create, knows how to score, and offers that a different dynamic in that attacking midfielder position, especially for Bafana Bafana, as you don't have a lot of depth in that position. I mean, players that I can think of in that natural position would be Neoma Emas, who hasn't really gotten his call for Bafana either, which is a long time coming. He also deserves his. But Themba Zwane also, but he is experienced at the age of 34 also, so can't really build around Themba, but he is great for experience also. So Ethan Chislett at the age of 23-24 also will provide a long-term replacement and a long-term option in that position, and can fight it out for Miami, who's also 27 also. So I think another player who also is gearing up for a big season in League One ahead, and hopefully after this season will head even higher up into a higher league out in England. And our next player, of course, that we'll be talking about is Siyabonga Ligeza, who plays for FC Fielder out in the National League. Also had about 11 goals, I believe, for his team last season. Also got bought from, I believe it was, what is the team that he got bought from? Also on the tip of my tongue, but can't really think of his team. But also another player out playing in England, 19 years old, can use both feet, but I believe he is another option, especially if in the under 23 position, under 23 camp. And that of course brings us to the end of today's episode of The Corner Flag. So thank you so much for sticking around for this long. And if you do think there are any players that we left out, I'd like to know. So please do mention them in the comments, and hopefully they'll be in the next video. But until next time, it's your boy Shane. See you next time.